giving you a voice.
Making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
Want to be our boss? Visit our Patreon to pledge your support at patreon.com/funfrc.
And for the month of September, all of our Patreons have a chance to win a Cooler Master MS-120 keyboard and mouse set.
But speaking of advertising, hey Karthik, what was the last thing you bought for $1?
That's a tough question. There's not much you can really get with $1. You know what? I got extra guacamole on my burrito.
Did that extra guacamole empower you to be the boss of your very own network?
It was really good, and I really do enjoy guac. So it maybe not, but it was still pretty good. I don't want to undersell the guac.
Tyler, can we bring up the part of the script where it says Karthik, yes, no answers? Anyway, well, now that opportunity is here, aside from your guacamole, because we have Patreon. Fun has gone independent of show sponsors, and in exchange for as little as 25 cents a week, you will get the power to say you support independent content in the first community. There's no way that you would see shows like Candidly Speaking on an official channel, that's for sure. So you can become our boss, not my boss, Tyler's boss, at patreon.com/funfrc.
Yes.
We believe that like any company with a bunch of bosses, you deserve a kickback. That's why each month starting in September, we're going to be doing giveaways solely for those who pledge their support on Patreon. So in September, we have a Cooler Master MS-120 keyboard and mouse set that will be given away. I actually use that. Sounds great. If you want to use climb the corporate fund ladder by pledging more, you'll receive more chances to win and get exclusive benefits like having your name show up in the credits of each show as a co-executive producer. If you watch live, we do still have Twitch subscriptions available, and we will be doing giveaways for subs live on air. But Patreon will ensure that you keep fun loud, live, and independent. So if you'd like, you can go to patreon.com/funfrc to pledge your support.
Yes. I'm doing the yes, no answer thing here,
Okay.
Am I
for more than yes, no answers.
Oh, I'm allowed now.
You're allowed.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the meat of the show here. And we have Adam Hurd from Team 9073, but Adam is also the founder of the GREYT product line, which he's going to talk about here. But basically what this was we've seen the world of COTS evolve over the years with, stuff that Andy Mark's done with the 2-speed gearboxes, Omni wheels and such, Vex Pro jumping in 2013 with what I call the COTS revolution. And now GREYT went to game-specific solutions with the GREYT product line. So, Adam, how did you start this, and why did you start the GREYT product line?
I don't know where the original idea came from exactly, but it's been something I've been talking about for years, and you never had the opportunity to do so. So in December, I left my full-time job actually to actually focus more on FRC and try to make the team bigger and better, and then also have some more schedule flexibility because my daughter's 17 months now, and I really wanted to have a lot of time to spend on that. But it just always bugged me over the years, the number of teams that, by the time it got to students in a room, they weren't the ones that founded the team, but they had no chance to be competitive, because it's like 5 kids in a room with an English teacher. They were told they didn't need machines or any of that sort of thing. And it wouldn't matter how good their ideas were, they weren't going to be able to make something game specific. And I don't know, 90% of FRC games need something game specific to be good. I guess maybe 2014 was like the closest you could be okay with the most minimal thing, like a 5136, just an intake. But teams just had nothing to start with. And a couple years, if you were really clever and you knew the Vex Pro product line or Andy Mark thing, you could match drill some things and do a lot of stuff and come up with something. But no one was selling you a kit. And I figured, I have the time to do so. I kind of need some money as well. Why don't I try going for this? And it's also kind of a nice set of constraints to make it easier of, if you do game specific, you really can't be prepared. There's not work you have to do before kickoff. So it's like, I'm going to have free time right after kickoff. Might as well do this. I guess to summarize that, it would just kill me when you go to an event and quickly you'd see these teams. And I was on one of these teams for a little bit in high school. We had some dark years where, by the time they go to match 2 or 3, they learn no one here wants to play with them. They get negative body language the whole time, pre-match and post-match. First expanding into more and more areas. These might be kids that their whole life they've thought that they're not as good as these other smart kids, and their community shouldn't be doing robots and that sort of thing. They go to this first event, just get killed, and it's not like they had something that did okay and they lost. They just incomparable. Anyone in the audience you surveyed, you'd be like, these teams aren't even in the same league. It just it sucks that there's nothing there for those teams. And we didn't sell one of these to every team, but I hope that we were able to sell at least to a couple teams that were able to use it in that way and improve their experience. And then, there's too much complaint, I think, on Chief Delphi from these like 60-year-old engineers that are like, well, these 13-year-old disenfranchised kids who just recognize that that was a shitty experience and you got to learn from it. That's how life is. And, you just got to get motivated and spend 4 years teaching yourself, and then you'll be good. It's like, that's not how most kids are. So I just wanted to give them something to, even give them a chance in the race, really.
I think that's an amazing take on the community, because I think even like we've talked about the COTS revolution so often. I think going game specific, I mean, obviously there's controversy. We're going to talk about it, but I think it's kind of cool to really be taking into account from a business perspective, like that, taking that team experience and making it better for the teams who need it. So speaking of controversy, of course, there was controversy last season about the GREYT products and their legality and whether they fit within the spirit of FRC. I think you kind of explained, the ethos behind GREYT products. I think it's wonderful, but I mean, rules opinion time. Why do you think the rules should allow for COTS mechanisms like this?
In terms of, if I was controlling the rules, should they allow for these kind of things? I think absolutely. Especially, what I sold was really far off from something that would just work out of the gate. The elevator required significant amount of work. It could all be done with a hand drill and a hacksaw, but you still do a fair amount of work. And then, the elevator just goes up and down. That's not new technology in FRC. I posted an elevator CAD, I think around fall 2011. Clearly a bunch of teams have been using that. I've seen so many elevators across the years that it's like they didn't even change my gusset plate. Like, that is my plate exactly. So if they're downloading someone else's CAD and making it, that's not all that much different than essentially just buying that CAD, because really all you're saving then is not cutting those 2D plates. As for the claw, we didn't advertise any specific configuration that worked, and to be honest, that's because we didn't actually even prototype it and be sure that there was one that worked. And that kind of made both of these difficult. Is the timeline we had to do this on, we just had to have really good faith that they would just work right out of the box. But no one bought both of these and then was just scoring 4 cubes a match and doing great. There was still significant work involved. As for is it legal per the letter of the FRC rules, I kind of figured they weren't going to make it illegal during the season. There's a lot of leeway in the rules. I mean, if you honestly read the rules from start to finish and then look at what a lot of teams do, there's so many judgment calls from different LRIs and stuff that it's like I wasn't going to let that be the concern of whether or not they would let us do this. Like 2015, when 1 week you can cheesecake, the next week you can't, then you can again. It just seemed like if a bunch of teams showed up with this, especially they wouldn't be these elite world beater teams most likely. There was no way first was retroactively going to come in and clarify and say no one can use this stuff. And I'm really curious what they do this year. It'd be really nice if they don't make it illegal, and if they do make it illegal, it'd be really nice if they clarify that before kickoff. But I'm mentally prepared a little bit for them making it illegal after kickoff. But then I'm curious what they'll allow teams to get away with, or sorry, companies. I mean, I think neither of these are the first game specific products in FRC. They definitely got the most attention, but there's definitely been products trickled out over the years from other suppliers that no one even said anything about. So yeah, I'm really curious what happens next year with the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why there was the controversy, I spent a lot of time thinking about this when your products came out, and I'm obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I'm a big fan of what they do, because I think that they kind of raise the floor. I think it's just a natural evolution of what we've seen with COTS parts, with the kit bot. Like, remember, we used to have to strap drills to wheels to make robots move, like things have really gotten better. And then if you look at what's happened with WPI Lib, but I think why there's people out there who have concerns, and it didn't manifest itself this year because I think the community assumed that there was going to be like 10 of these great robots at every event, and that wasn't the case. But I think a lot of people were like, it kind of sucks that I have to make a choice now between doing my own thing or buying COTS. But if I don't decide to do my own thing, I'm going to be at a disadvantage. And that's when people kind of get salty about this, because they feel like, I want to do my own thing, but and everyone's like, hey, it's your own team, do whatever you want, we're not going to judge. But it's like, yeah, you could say that to me, But like at the same time, if I do my own thing, I'm putting myself at a disadvantage. It's a similar argument that comes when you talk about getting rid of the bag, because a lot of people are just like, there's some teams who like, I want to only work for 6 weeks. And then like some jackass on Chief Delphi will be like, you only have to work for 6 weeks. Learn how to limit yourself. And they're like, well, yeah, I understand that. But if I limit that myself, I know my team is going to suck compared to the teams who work for 12 weeks. And so I think that's where like some teams kind of want to see this reined in. And
Mhm.
I think they were upset early on because the concerns went away really quickly once events started, because I mean, we weren't seeing armies of great robots out there. I think people had this idea suddenly that like every team who had a credit card was suddenly going to be 973. And like that was like the terrifying scenario they were picturing. And, you know, like maybe we get to that point one day, because maybe this year it's not just Adam who's selling stuff. Like maybe, you know, Dan Kimura out of Michigan decides to start a product line, and Mason in California starts one. Like all these, like, you know, people who have a little bit more time start selling stuff, and all of a sudden, like FRC is totally changing and whatever. But at the same time, like I think it's fine, but I get why people were concerned. Like I didn't want to. I think a lot of people were being very dismissive of some of the concerns. It's like I get it. Like I get why you would feel that way, especially as like a high school student. It's the same argument with Robot in 3 days. It's the same sort of thing. Why some people don't like it. It's like people are like, oh well, you just don't have to look at it. It's like, yeah, if I don't look at it, I'm putting myself at a disadvantage. And like the base, some people don't like that floor is being artificially inflated. I love it, but I don't know. It's you know, a good sort of discussion there. We got some few questions and comments from chat. From our friend Nick Last underscore. The only issue I had was price. That's not exactly the thing you can control. Adam, what was like the determining factor for you setting price?
You know, so I tried to keep them as cheap as possible, and I priced them what I thought was good margin over what our costs would be. And actually, I didn't price them high enough, unfortunately, and didn't, you know, make as much money as I would have liked this year.
For
But
the amount of custom design work and the time frame it was being done in, your prices were incredibly reasonable.
yeah, I mean, when I started looking at it at the end of the season, and then also, you know, got a lot of feedback from people at Champs, it, you know, the response I got from most teams is that it should just be the maximum legal price, as long as the maximum legal price stays in kind of that 450 range, because the teams that bought it and were happy with it, it's like that number just didn't even show up to them. I mean, you're paying $5,000 to go to your first event, $4,000 to go to other ones, and it had that much of an impact for them, and they were very happy. And also, like, I mean, if you compare this to doing it yourself, you really just mask the price because you're buying a little bit of this and a little bit of that and that sort of thing. I would be very surprised if someone else could go on Chief Delphi and make an elevator that works as well that is cheaper than that, because you're using almost the same stuff. Now, there were a couple of things that were silly in there, because like the elevator was not conceived of before kickoff at all. We didn't even think about doing an elevator until we saw the game, and RC's like, Adam, you got to do an elevator. Everyone's going to want an elevator. So like the idler pulleys were kind of more expensive than we needed. There were a couple spots where we used like pneumatic cylinder parts as, you know, way to go 90 degrees structurally. So, you know, we could have squeezed maybe $20 out of it if we planned farther ahead, but you know, you can't do that with game specific stuff, obviously. So I'd like to think the value teams got out of it was huge. I mean, no one's shocked anymore that shifting gearboxes cost $300, and that's a much more solved problem with,
Yeah,
you know, much higher inventory. You know, you're going to be able to sell them year to year.
I'll share an anecdote from when I used to work at Vex. So one of the things, we would have teams call the IFI Canada office all the time. The most common question every year was, how do I build this? I.e., like, how do I build an intake for this game? How do I, you know, and then they were like, do you have a kit for this? Do you have a kit for this? And like, I'd walk people through like a basic setup, like a VersaPlanetary and rollers and whatever. But they're like, no, I just want a kit. And it was crazy how many people wanted this. So the demand is definitely there for it. So it makes sense that you hit that market. A lot of people in chat were commenting about each phase of the COTS revolution. Each time something new was introduced, someone was upset. People were upset when gearboxes first were introduced into the kit. People were upset when Andy Mark started selling Omni wheels, because there used to be like 10 teams in the world who would build their own Omni wheels, and people were like upset that they were losing that sort of competitive advantage. And so I think this is there's always going to be this natural pushback, but like, I don't know, there's two visions of the world of FRC, and I'd love to hear both yours and Libby's thoughts on this. There's some people who love this open market for things where you can just do crazy stuff. And there's other people who really would like to see FRC go back to an Apollo 13 like challenge, where you get a bunch of parts in a box and you got to build a robot about that. So we're so far away from that now. But what do you guys think about movements to move FRC to more restricted rules? I saw someone in chat talk about going to like 1 degree of freedom on COTS mechanisms. What are your sort of thoughts on that, Libby?
Yeah, so I actually, as you guys were talking, I was thinking about something for the GREYT products that we actually encountered during our season when the GREYT products came out was, our team was working pretty hard on an elevator, making sure it was good. One of the things, and I know that chat is kind of talking about pricing and how that's hard for some of the teams that, like Adam, you were saying, who these are meant for, right? That price might make it hard to afford. And I understand that our team's in a place of relative privilege, that we have a pretty high budget. When the GREYT products came out, we literally all sat back and were like, okay, we can afford to like try and mess this up. And we know that there's a solution that will be in our back pocket. And it's a different iteration of solving that problem. In my opinion, FRC is a hard challenge, and it should be. But when you have things like COTS products, even when, like, I'm trying to think, like when VersaFrame came out, rather than having to be super precise with exact, like, it was such a nice upgrade for teams who didn't think they had that kind of manufacturing capability. And obviously this is a different solution, right? It's the answer to the problem. It's, do you have a kit for this? Not, here's how you might make a kit for this out of stock metal. But I think for me, it's exactly like you said, Adam. It's allowing a team where normally their solutions are just like duct tape something together and get totally stomped and be disappointed, to then have an FRC experience where the floor is raised for everybody. And I don't agree with things like limiting to 1 degree of freedom. It was brought up in chat as a comparison in FTC, and I mentor both FTC and FRC teams. And to me, that's just trying to artificially stunt what's going on. FTC also doesn't have a price limit, so it's like a very stupid set of rules. I'm just being honest. It makes no sense that you can only have 1 degree of freedom, but you can buy a $10,000 part with 1 degree of freedom. So that just doesn't entirely make sense to me. But I'm a big fan of stuff that allows teams to focus on the challenges that they have the resources, the time, energy, and money to invest in, and then not have to worry about being at a huge jump of a disadvantage in other spaces. So I'm down for it.
When I started forever ago in middle school, actually, first was what you were talking about with, I think it was small parts catalog. And I just remember being always told, like, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. So if first wants to go back to that at all, I think you would need multiple classes of FRC, which I think no one would be happy with. You'd have your like Formula One class and all these lower classes, or you just got to concede that this whole idea of growth and more teams and getting into more and more schools isn't going to work with that sort of thing. I also think kind of like maybe up through 2008 or so, and then, kind of blending until now, you used to be able to really win in first with just hardware excellence. And there were a lot of elite teams that didn't have great system integration, didn't have great software. Now you need great system integration and great software on top of hardware excellence. And so many teams just aren't even in the running because they can't even get the hardware. So it's like, sure, they can get the hardware now. You're still not going to get a 4-key auto like Boofs. Like, it's just not happening with your resources. No one's going to suddenly be competing on that level on the basis of hardware being sold, which also makes me wonder. I think someone raised the point on Chief and stuff like, what if 2D4 starts selling software? Obviously that's a lot harder to integrate, but I'm curious who's going to be the first person to come out and sell, a better path planner, or maybe they like Skype in and help you tune it, or, something like that, to then, shift it into even more of that realm.
Right. Well, I guess, to a certain degree, the Limelight camera is a little bit of that, because there's so much software on there that's doing camera work that people have developed in their own libraries in the past. But yeah, it's an interesting world to see how this is all going to evolve in the future. I think first, at some point, is going to have to draw a line in the sand of what's too far. But until they do that, the possibilities are endless. One question I have for you, Adam, is, like, again, there was huge discussion about GREYT on Chief in February, and then the season kind of started and everyone kind of all went away. So how successful were these products last year? Like, what was the market uptake, if you can share that? And if you can't, do you at least have some examples of teams who were able to integrate these products into successful robots?
So can't share the numbers, unfortunately. I will say, definitely kind of sold in that middle range of, when I was talking with RC early, of like, if we sell above this number, that's great. and it'd be insane if we sold above this other number. And we kind of ended up right in the middle, and we were both, happy with how that worked out. I actually haven't really done a deep dive and found all the teams that used it. I know RC knows who they were all sold to, so it's something we definitely want to go back and look at. We're probably going to hang out a lot this fall at off seasons, and we'll do a lot of that then. I do know, based on feedback and stuff, quite a few teams bought one or both just to have, and like to give the kids in shop and play with, and then decide, whether or not they were going to use it. I did snap this picture that Tyler's showing up at on the screen here at Champs of. So I'm assuming 1369 won the South Florida Regional with this claw on. It'd be a little embarrassing if they put it on after the regional and went to Champs. I never actually checked, but it seems like a fair assumption. I remember seeing 333 posted on Chief. They downloaded the CAD for the claw. And made their own version and put some threes in it, so you knew it was theirs. One of my students actually told me that a couple people were bragging on Discord that people had downloaded the elevator CAD and made their own, like they really pulled a fast one. And it's like that's hilarious, because if you hadn't have done that, you just would have used the other elevator CAD I already posted.
That's the point, right? Like,
yeah. And
you really got him.
That's kind of the other half of what inspired the elevators. RC's like, you got to make an elevator. And the other half is like our contact page, our Facebook page, the ramp email, me personally, everyone's like, hey, where's the elevator CAD? I need the elevator CAD today. And then you get the follow-up email of like, okay, how do I make all this? And just so on and so on. It's like, God, it really seems like people would want this. I think the best story probably in terms of most success, if you want the counter argument of like no one being a world beater, is 1102 looked pretty sweet winning. I'm going to get the district wrong. Are they Georgia? Yeah, and somewhere on Chief, I wasn't able to find the post. One of their mentors was talking through. I think they used to have like a vacuum setup, and they got to some point in the season, and I guess they were unhappy with this. And
hold on, stop. Why does it have 6 Mecanum wheels?
That's a great question.
This is distressing to me personally. But that's we're talking about elevator and pickup here. We're not talking about wheel drivetrains. Let's talk about great stuff.
So yeah, there's definitely a post somewhere where they were talking to of like, what do we do to fix this robot? What do we do to make it better? Sorry to the team if I'm paraphrasing this wrong. And they agreed, well, let's just buy the claw. And I honestly don't know how much time they spent tuning it in or figuring out what holes worked or that sort of thing. But when I watched Final Match 1 and Final Match 2, they did look pretty good using it here.
They might have looked good, but it would have been because they had 6 Mecanum wheels on their robot, Adam.
Easily could have been.
Yeah, 50% more Mecanum wheels.
That's the key to success, is just the more Mecanum wheels you have added on. So we have a couple of comments from chat. I think we probably want to move some of that to a little bit of a wrap-up discussion on GREYT, but really to kind of our final true question for you before we let chat at you is what's in store for you guys for 2019? Will there be new GREYT products? They would obviously be tailored for the game, but will the general process and timing be different, or do you have any changes planned? What's on your mind?
So at an absolute minimum, unless they make it explicitly illegal, and to be honest, if they make it explicitly illegal, we're going to try to find whatever is one step inside that line and try to find a way to make things happen. We'll be doing new products for the next game. One mistake we made this year is I really didn't want to be unable to deliver to people that had ordered. And I didn't really reason through about not being able to deliver to people that had ordered but were then waitlisted. So, we had all of that design done the day after kickoff. And then we started sourcing stuff, and we waited until we had not necessarily stuff in hand, but it's like coming from the shop today to post it. So this next season, when we have that CAD done, which I would say is between 0 to 3 days after kickoff, we're going to start taking pre-orders then off the CAD. Probably have some caveat of like a little bit might change in terms of the CAD, and we'll make sure to communicate that as soon as it does, so that we can better forecast the demand. Because the initial run was larger than I thought we would sell initially, and we sold that instantly. And then I think we ordered like 3 to 4 times whatever our wait list was at that point, and then sold that again, and then did that for another round or two, and then ended up with some at the end. But just kept being surprised by how many people were ordering even that late in the season. We are talking about doing some generic things that would be useful year to year, and just not sure either of us will have the bandwidth to get those out before this next season, though.
Wow. So, that's a pretty cool announcement for teams to feel secure knowing that, hey, GREYT's going to have something, to order, and that you can take a look at the CAD for, like you were saying, like day 3, day 4.
Yeah, I'd like to think we could definitely get something out by Wednesday, because I mean, I feel like if it takes longer than that to design, it's probably out of this configurable realm. And,
Mm,
half because of ethics and half because of laziness, we don't want to sell something that's just going to work perfectly with the game piece of like the dimensions are machined in, you can't adjust it, it just works. Because I think we'd get a lot more complaints about it being too much of a solution then. And two, it's also just a lot of risk to us saying this is the perfect solution, it's going to work out of the box, there's nothing you can do wrong with it. So leaving it in that realm of like it's like the Great Claw probably didn't look too different than those configurable prototypes you see a lot of teams make in house. They made a couple hand ones, they're like, okay, perfect, we learned enough, let's make that really sweet one that we can just adjust a bunch and figure out what works. So I think most things will kind of look like that realm of you still got to do something to make them work.
yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, you're also kind of creating like a little bit of a game-specific prototyping platform, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. And it did seem like some people bought it for that reason. Especially the Claw. They got their drive done, they got their armor elevator done, and they bought that to then start prototyping stuff, and then didn't necessarily field a robot with it.
Yeah,
I think that's a fantastic place to jump off of as well. Is some of these challenges are so different. Like we hadn't had an elevator game in so long. I like the idea of a team being able to at least have a jumping off point or CAD to look at or where to start. I think that's an awesome resource.